Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another YouTube video. Today is Wednesday, May 13th, and on Sunday, the 2026 NBA draft order was released, and I figured it would be a great time to do a mock draft where I do what I would do rather than trying to predict what these teams would do. Because at the end of the day, trying to predict what these teams do is almost impossible. Somebody throws a curveball every year, but what I can do personally, without a shadow of a doubt, is express my own opinions and what I would do if I were in the front office of various NBA teams. So, with all that said, I think we can get straight into it. First overall pick, the Washington Wizards. I will go Darren Peterson here instead of AJ DeBonta. AJ DeBonta will be a common selection for people trying to strengthen the wing depth in Washington. For me personally, I think that the Wizards are not in a position to draft anyone other than the best player on the board. And for me, I think the shot making ability of Darren Peterson is so one of a kind. Just does everything you want to as a shot maker perfectly well. Finishes at the rim, shoots it well all three levels. There's concerns about his playmaking, but other than that, I'm so confident in everything else he does well. I think that his playmaking also isn't the biggest concern. I think that the role that he had to take on in Kansas kind of diminished his ability to be the playmaker that was on tape at times when he was in high school. And I'm very confident in Darren Peterson. I also think he's an exceptional defender, and that gets overlooked as part of his game because of how good the offense is. So for me, Darren Peterson will be an amazing two-way player from day one, and Washington will be very excited to draft him first overall. At least they would be if I were in charge. Will they actually do that? Time will tell. On to the second pick. We are going to keep AJ DeBonta in the state of Utah, have the Jazz select him second overall. I think this one comes down to him or Boozer, obviously. The difference for me is I think there's just too many power forwards in Utah to justify drafting another one. I know some people will say that the Jazz aren't in enough of a position to draft best player available, but I've got to kind of push back on that. I think when you already have Jaren Jackson and Lauri Markkanen, they've converted Markkanen into more of a three, and even that bit is kind of bizarre. But you never know. They find some way to make it worse. But for me, I think with Markkanen, Jaren Jackson, and Ace Bailey, all three of those guys, their best position is power forward, at least how I see it. So I would draft AJ DeBonta, try him at the three. What does that starting five look like? I don't know. Maybe somebody kind of falls out of order. Maybe they move away from Lauri Markkanen. Maybe they move away from Walker Kessler. That seems like it's at least a bit of a possibility. But for now, I'll say that they draft Bonta and they figure out the rest later. On to the third pick. This is pretty simple for me. Cameron Boozer. He's the second best player in the class in my eyes. Pretty close to first. Exceptional offensive player. Um, his biggest weaknesses to some honestly don't really concern me. The thing that I am concerned about is his rim protection, but I don't think any team intends on playing him as a center. Um, when you've got a player like Boozer at the four that sees the floor so well, shoots it very well, that's an underrated part of his game. People talk about him as if he's like an unskilled bully that can't really spread the floor. But he shot 39% from in college, and that was not on low volume. 39% from three, well over 50 from the field. Didn't shoot very many mid ranges. That's more of a function of John Shayer's offensive schemes than a lack of ability more than anything else, which most NBA teams don't really care. They don't really care if you can shoot mid ranges unless you are among the league's best from that area. Think of a Shea Gilgeous-Alexander type of player. So if you can get constant good possessions out of the post, Maybe you'll see some inverted pick and roll action here and there where they let him be the ball handler. Not something that he'll live off of. Something that he will do very well is as the roll man or as the screen setter on pick and pop actions. He'll be very effective there as he was in college. And Memphis will be very happy to get him as they likely start a new era without John Morant involved. On to the fourth pick, the Chicago Bulls. I think Caleb Wilson makes the most sense. For me, this would be between Caleb Wilson, Wagler, or Kingston Flemings. I think that Chicago's front court is just so disgusting at times last year. Uh, and I think that Josh Giddey played some good basketball and that both of those guards are kind of a weird fit alongside him. So just draft Caleb Wilson. Pretty high floor upside bet, but also has a lot of potential inside of him if his shot develops in a way that the indicators look positive about. He doesn't have a broken jumper or anything like that. He just didn't shoot very much. They didn't go in at some terribly high rate, but I think that it's something that can be improved upon feasibly. I That's always a misconception, if you will. People talk about players maybe developing a jumper, but it's not something that looks like it'll actually be possible on tape or statistically. That's not really the case with Wilson. Wilson developing a jumper could be possible, and that would take his game that's already very strong to another level. Obviously, already a very well rounded defender, pretty switchable, very athletic, going to be amazing in transition, going to be amazing in half court because of his play finishing ability. And he'll be a great fit in Chicago. On to the fifth pick. I went with Kean Wagler. That was between Wagler and Kingston Flemings for me. Uh, the thing with that and why I ended up not going for Flemings is I think that Darius Garland is a player that they should at least kind of plan around having in the long haul. He had a good year, a good second half of the year when he came to Los Angeles, and I wouldn't draft a point guard immediately that will clash with him. I think that Wagler is a guy who can get minutes alongside Garland potentially. I say potentially instead of saying it decidedly because the defensive backcourt of Garland and Wagler is questionable, but on offense it works. Wagler at Illinois showed plenty of prowess both on ball and off ball. Kind of split those roles with Kylan Boswell. It was about 50-50 if he was the lead guard, if he operated as a two guard. So I think that should be the pick for the Clippers here. On to the sixth pick, the Brooklyn Nets. I think Kingston Flemings is the guy that makes the most sense. It's a weird one because their guard room is crowded with young players because they drafted so many in the 2025 draft. But frankly, those guys just don't look very enticing or very appealing in the long run. Uh, Ben Saraf, not a big fan. Not a very big fan of Nolan Traore. Uh, Igor Demon looked fine, but that's not really a guy you bank on. I think that the Nets, forgive me, should still go with the best point guard available, and for me, that is Kingston Flemings of Brooklyn. On to the seventh pick. I will go with Braden Burries, the guard out of Arizona to Sacramento. I think with Burry, some people may have a lasting image of his final game at college where that Michigan defense really bullied him, but I don't think that's an indicator of the player he is. He was a big part in Arizona's incredibly successful season. Amazing two-way player, great off the catch on offense, has self-creation chops. He is no slouch in that regard. He can find his own shot. On defense, he is amazing on ball, smart off ball, won't make a lot of mistakes. He'll force some turnovers, and he was for me the best player left on the board. And so that's why I think that Sacramento should just take whoever the best guy available is. They are not in a position to worry about any sort of need. They need everything. On to the eighth pick for the Atlanta Hawks. This is a tough one. It was down to Michael Brown or Koa Pete. I landed on Brown. The reason why I landed on Brown is I think that this guard class may dry up before they pick again later in the first round. I'll get to that pick later, obviously. But I don't think it would be in their best interest to draft a guard or draft a big now, wait on the guard, and have to settle with whatever guard is available in the 20s. They pick 23rd again, I believe. We'll take a look at that. That is, yes, the 23rd pick to Atlanta. So I say take Michael Brown now at 9. You get in a pretty good self creator, an amazing creator for others, a guy who his shot was kind of shaky throughout the college basketball season. I attribute that to injury. Throughout ACC play, he shot 38%. In high school, he shot very well from three. I don't have those numbers on me, but I can I remember that they were exceptional throughout high school. And I don't believe that the shooting we saw at times that was very inconsistent, at sometimes just bad for Louisville is going to be what he'll give you in the NBA. So for the Atlanta Hawks, I say Michael Brown, another offensive engine, a player to perhaps take the reins from CJ McCollum, which will probably be soon because CJ McCollum's on the older side. So that is my pick at 8, Michael Brown Jr. On to Dallas. I think this was a no brainer that it had to be a guard. I think they also really could use another self creator. And with the thing that was most notable about the Mavericks throughout the season was they just didn't have any real guard ability. That's why you saw Cooper Flag playing point guard early in the season. Once he moved off of that, he exploded, and eventually it led to a Rookie of the Year season. For me, I'm going to go LeBaron Philon here. Uh, and obviously, getting Kyrie Irving back in Dallas will alleviate a lot of the issues that I brought up. But Kyrie Irving won't be around forever. Kyrie Irving is into his 30s. He's coming off an ACL tear now, and you've got to think about the short term and the long term. Philon, a bigger guard, physical player, and the most impressive thing about him to me is how much he grew from his freshman year to his sophomore year. He became a much better shooter in his sophomore year to the point where that is now one of his plus traits, even though it very much so was not in his freshman year. He's got serious outside game, amazing shot creator, was the engine for a lot of what Alabama wanted to do throughout this 2025-26 college basketball season. Um, and yeah, I think he will be an amazing fit with Cooper Flag in the long run. I don't want to see more on ball Cooper Flag. That was a weird experiment. On to the 10th pick. For me, this is one that I feel like a lot of people are going to disagree with, but I'm going to go Koa Pete here. Uh, I think you take the upside swing. For what I feel about Koa Pete is if that shot develops, which I feel confident that there's something there because he's a strong mid range shooter. He was a strong mid range shooter all throughout his college basketball season. I believe that he can expand that range. He shot threes sparsely, didn't shoot the worst percentage ever, but he wasn't shooting it at a high enough rate for it to be of any real value. And so I think you bank on that. You know what you're getting as a play finisher, an amazing lob threat, an amazing player in transition on both ends of the floor. Great at stopping transition offense as well as creating transition offense for his team. I think he's got smart playmaking ability. He sees the floor pretty well out of the post. there's questions about how well his post game will work at the next level because he's not the most physically imposing guy compared to an NBA big, even though he was very physically imposing compared to a lot of college basketball bigs. But I would make that pick. Koa Pete for me at 10. Giannis Antetokounmpo likely on his way out the door. We'll see who they get for him in Milwaukee, but I'd say Koa Pete is a swing you take because the Bucks likely won't be good again next year. They'll probably have plenty of assets, and if they miss on the 10th pick this year, they can miss on the 10th pick this year. They have some flexibility. I think a team with a lot less flexibility is the Golden State Warriors at 11, who I am going to go with Kareem Lopez, the Mexican player playing for the New Zealand Breakers. Very big physical body. Uh, you wish the shot was there more, but he's got a strong feel for the game, and he has strong indicators about what he can develop into because of his athleticism. I feel as if he's going to have to make shots from day one, and if he can't make outside looks from day one, he may run into some trouble staying on the floor just because that's likely going to be his role. He's not much of a self creator, and the shot can be inconsistent at times. But I think you take the upside play on his feel for the game, sees the floor well. He's a pretty good ball handler, which makes it confusing and a tad frustrating that he doesn't have very much success creating for himself. But there's still a lot to be encouraged by about his ability to just operate on both ends as a floor runner, as a secondary ball handler, somebody who will just keep the ball moving, won't be a stopper, which is really always what always works in Golden State. If you can keep the ball moving efficiently and get it to the guy wearing 30, things will work out for you if you play for the Warriors. So I go Kareem Lopez for Golden State. On to the 12th pick. This is the easiest one I have to make. It'll be Yaxel Lendenborg out of Michigan. Older prospect, but Oklahoma City doesn't care about that. They're winning a lot of games right now. They're ecstatic to even be in the lottery and have a shot at this guy. If he was 20 years old and not 24 years old, we would be talking about him about a good 7 picks higher. Just an amazing player, so much versatility. Played the 4 and the 5 through his early college years at UAB. Got to his final year at Michigan, moved to the 3, was exceptional in it, spread the floor well. So amazing in transition, and an excellent defender. Does everything that Oklahoma City will want, and he'll be an impact player from day one. They'll find somewhere to put him on the floor because he's so good. On to the 13th pick, the Miami Heat. I'm going to go Dalen Swain here. Um, I think that they're in a position where you can take the bet on his shot potentially developing, and then you have truly one of the best offensive players in the league. Even if that shot never comes along, you get an exceptional player who can play on the ball very well, sees the floor well, is an amazing isolation scorer. Similar to Kyle Anderson, but the difference is not he isn't playing in slow motion. There's nothing slow mo about Dalen Swain. He would never tout such a nickname because he moves so well. He is such an amazing isolation scorer. I would say watch the game that Texas played against Purdue in the NCAA tournament, and you see what I'm talking about immediately. Just instant bucket, and that's without a consistent enough 3 point shot. I think if that develops and he becomes even a guy that will shoot 34% from three, we've got a great player on our hands, a multiple time All Star, something like that. On to the 14th pick. Charlotte Hornets, I am going to go Ade Mara. Obviously, they have Ryan Kalkbrenner and Diabate already, but I think that that platoon worked, but I think that you can kind of upgrade upon both of those guys. Mara offers the shot blocking and the play finishing that Diabate and Kalkbrenner both offer. What he offers that those guys do not offer is exceptional outlet passing, uh, pretty smooth touch around the rim that gives him some potential as a post scorer, although he hadn't really shown it as much. Part of it was because Michigan didn't care as much too, because they were connected so well and could live off of a lot of lobs and set plays. But I think with Mara, if you pair him with a guy like LaMelo Ball and he has a secondary creator like Con Kneppel, he will do an amazing job of just being in the right place at the right time and also getting the ball down the floor quickly, which is would be so valuable for a team like Charlotte that likes to play very fast. So that would be my pick there. Something unfortunate would happen to either himself, Kalkbrenner, or Diabate, but they can live with the competition and they will pick again later. They can fill in a bit of the wing need with that other pick they have coming up at 18. I'll talk more about that when we get to 18. But for now, let's move on to the 15th pick, the Chicago Bulls. I will go with Bennett Sturts. In this mock, I have them picking Caleb Wilson earlier. And I think with this next pick, you can take a bet on a second unit leader, maybe a guy that if you decide to move on from Josh Giddey, which I can't imagine they do after the year he just had, but he can definitely be a second unit leader. Watching Sturts at Iowa, he was a strong playmaker, but was really the engine that made that offense go. The bulk scorer at Iowa and at Drake in 2024-25. You see what he does so well. Um, Excellent function out of the pick and roll, has deep range, and just so smart in getting to his spots. Those are things that you need for a potential bench unit leader, and I think that's what Sturts could offer from day one. On to the 16th pick. I will go with uh, Darius Acuff wherever he is. Darius Acuff. Um, I am lower on him than consensus, a lot lower. Some people would shout him as high as 5. I have two big gripes with him. One, he did not seem to be the best finisher against bigger, more physical teams. The game he had against Tennessee, the game he had against Florida, made that stand out in particular. There were a few other games where he seemed to struggle with the length and the size of the teams that resemble an NBA defense the closest, and so that's a cause for concern. The other issue that arises is he is likely going to come into the NBA as the worst defender in the National Basketball Association, and so I just don't want to draft him very high. But I think Memphis is in a spot where they'll be moving off John Morant, and they can take a gamble on him potentially being an exceptional offensive hub that gets a lot of points, a lot of assists, creates well for others, operates the pick and roll well. But I just wouldn't draft him super high. So late lottery to outside the lottery is where I would go for Darius Acuff. And in this instance, he ends up in Memphis to replace a presumably gone John Morant. 17th pick, I will go with Cameron Carr to the Oklahoma City Thunder. They can add another wing that will do great things on defense. Uh, if they move on from Lou Dort in the summer, that's likely a player that can eat those minutes. Athletic player, strong defender, shoots the ball very well. Uh, Decent in self creation. That is something that might kind of goes under the radar as an issue that Oklahoma City has because of the prowess of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. At times, they really don't have a lot of self creation. AJ Mitchell as well alleviates that issue, but if one of those guys is not on the floor, that Thunder offense can get ugly at times. And so I think a player like Cameron Carr, who can operate both on ball and off ball, may give them some help. And if nothing else, he'll be an amazing defender, very athletic, and he'll knock threes down if left unattended, or in some cases, if he is defended well. On to the next pick, I am going with Isaiah Evans out of Duke to the Charlotte Hornets. Again, I cannot find his name, but Isaiah Evans is my pick there. Charlotte at times could use another wing. Miles Bridges had good points, rebounds, and assists, but at times he was a bit of a ball stopper. I think that a player like Evans will have less of those issues, and he'll shoot it very well. An amazing defender. He'll fit right in with Charlotte's run and gun offense, and I would be excited to see the types of lineups they could put together. Something like LaMelo, Evans, Kneppel, Miller, and I just drafted a Daymar to Charlotte, so I'll say a Daymar. But things like that, they can go small and spread the floor, have four great shooters that give teams trouble, and allow LaMelo Ball and Kneppel to attack downhill, get layups, and get easier looks at the rim. On to the 19th pick, the Toronto Raptors. They have to draft whoever the best big is left on the board. For me, that is Hans Steinbach out of Washington. The comparison I've had for Hans Steinbach is he's like a tight end, a great football tight end, where throw him the ball and just let him get his hands on it, and he'll make something happen because of his physicality. Uh, he's got very big hands. He catches the ball well. That's something that kind of goes under the radar, but watching the Lakers as an example, and you notice DeAndre Ayton literally cannot catch a ball, and it's holding the Lakers back. There's other examples in the league that is the most extreme one that's coming to mind right now because I was just watching some of the film back from Game 4 of Lakers Thunder. And yeah, I think Hans Steinbach as a play finisher, a lob threat, gives you so much. I think he's a strong defender and rim protector on the other end. And he isn't going to like spread the floor in the traditional sense where he'll give you threes, but he'll be effective as a five because he can get to the mid range enough, and he won't be a zero on offense. If you can do something on offense, then that makes you a pretty valuable player if you're already a good defender. On to the 20th pick, the San Antonio Spurs. I will go Nate Ament here. This is another one that I'm a bit lower than the consensus. I know some people like him lottery. I do not. I think that he's still too raw. Um, in fairness, there are some pretty obvious things to like. He didn't shoot particularly well in college, but he's got such a pretty stroke that it feels like they're almost bound to start falling eventually. Um, some people see him as like a very crafty self creator. I don't really see that. What I do see is a guy who has immense potential as a defender. It's about realizing and unlocking that because he didn't look like the best defender at Tennessee, but the potential was clearly there. And so I think he can make some threes and take his game to another level, which there isn't some experiment that you need to do on his jumper or anything like that, which is often the case with guys who didn't shoot very well. Um, and he won't be taking on such a big role like he did at Tennessee. He'll be a bench option, a role player, at least to start, and then you see what he develops into. The 21st pick for the Detroit Pistons, I will go with Christian Anderson out of Texas Tech. He is an amazing pick and roll operator. somebody who can be good minutes without Cade Cunningham on the floor. An amazing shooter. He's questionable when he doesn't have a screen coming for him. Similar to like a Tyrese Maxey. I'm not saying he's as good as Tyrese Maxey, but that's he's got a similar play style. But as a leader for the second unit, that's a nice player to have. He sees the floor well. He will create looks, good at getting passes to the rim, and an amazing shooter. Uh, Texas Tech's offense went as far as he went in his time there. And I think in Detroit, he'll be able to not, I don't want to say learn from Cade Cunningham, but that almost kind of is what it is. Learn from Cunningham's ability to get downhill. Obviously, he's not as big as Cade Cunningham, and that's part of it. But still, I think he will grow into a strong player. 22nd overall, the Philadelphia 76ers. I like Joshua Jefferson here. I think they could use a wing on that team, and that was very obvious at long stretches of the season. They could use a real power forward. Uh, they could use a lot of things for that bench unit, really. But when Kelly Oubre was off, or when if Kelly Oubre got into foul trouble or something like that, the front court diminished very quickly. And so a player like Jefferson, who is very overqualified to be a role player, if that makes sense. He is a strong ball handler, can create for himself well, sees the floor well, similar to like a Tony Kukoc or a Lamar Odom. Very strong on the ball for his size. That's something that the Sixers could use, and they could use badly, really. 23rd overall, I will say Morez Johnson to the Atlanta Hawks. This is why I said that I thought the Hawks should wait on drafting a big. Obviously, it's possible that there is a run of big men and that ends up being not the right decision. But in this mock, I don't have a run on bigs, and so you get Morez Johnson at 23, a key piece for the title-winning Michigan team. Um, he played with two potential lottery picks, two likely lottery picks in Lendenborg and Mara, and so his ability kind of goes under the radar at times. But he's a good shot blocker, good rebounder, and he scored well in a very crowded front court. Now, granted, he wasn't doing a lot of self creation, it was mostly catching lobs, but that's what Atlanta needs. With big men coming from college to the NBA, a lot of the times they don't really need a post scorer, somebody who will get buckets for themselves. They need somebody who will catch lobs well and play defense well and run the floor well. With Morez Johnson, that's exactly what the Atlanta Hawks are getting. 24th overall, the New York Knicks. I say Allen Graves. There's a pretty large camp that likes Allen Graves a lot higher than I have him. I'm talking into the teens, and statistically, you understand why. Shot it very well. His on-offs are exceptional. Um, Grades as one of the most effective offensive players in the country. Uh, Honestly, I was surprised that he ended up going to the draft. Not because I think he's a bad player or anything like that. I think he's a very good player, and I think he'll be an important player for whatever teams ends up with him. In this case, in this mock draft, the Knicks. I'm just surprised that a player who was a bench player for the majority of the year for Santa Clara ended up leaving early. I figured he would transfer and play at a bigger program, take on a starting role. But as of now, he's in the draft, and he gives the Knicks a wing defender, somebody who come in, will spread the floor, and will be another strong defender. You can never have too many of those, and the Knicks already do have a lot of those, but he'd be another addition to an already strong defensive unit. The 25th pick, the Los Angeles Lakers. This just has to be a big man, and I think it should be a big man with exceptional defensive ability. There is no better defender in this draft than Jaden Cates. Um, if I was a very strong believer in his offense, he would be much higher up this draft. But the turnover rates are concerning. a low assist rate, even by a center standards. Does not spread the floor very well. Doesn't actually finish particularly well. Uh, he did in his freshman year at Arizona State. The sample size statistically are not large enough at Kentucky. He looked pretty good in those games at Kentucky, uh, but it's such a short amount of games. Uh, he's got pretty solid, pretty solid indicators as a shooter. I think that he showed some mid-range potential in one of those games that Kentucky lose against St. John's, where he made a few mid-ranges. But again, we're looking at such a small sample size. It's a weird situation. Obviously, the injury concerns exist, but I think alongside Luka Doncic and presumably Austin Reeves, potentially also LeBron James, who knows how that Lakers team looks because basically the only certainty is Luka Doncic. But at any rate, they should have plenty of playmakers to get him the ball as a play finisher, and he won't have to try and operate out of the post. And on defense, he would be an amazing anchor for a team that could really use a defensive anchor. Just an exceptional defender. You are hoping with Cadence that his offense is anything. As in, when I say anything, I mean you hope that he can be on the floor and touch the ball and is not a guaranteed turnover, and that he can make shots at the rim. You don't really need anything else because his defense is that good. The concern is his offense going to be good enough to do that for me? If I was very confident in his offense, he would be much higher up this board. On to the 26th pick for the Denver Nuggets. I am going to go Tyler Tanner. Tyler Tanner, obviously, smaller guy, measured in at 5'10 barefoot, but for Vanderbilt, he just racked up the stocks, got so many steals, so many blocks, an amazing on ball defender, and some people are going to shy away from him because of the development of Reed Shepard, particularly playoff Reed Shepard not looking very good. But I think that's a bit of an unfair comparison because I think he is a much stronger on ball player. Um, for his size, he is an amazing finisher. He had dunks in this season, despite only being 5'10. And you hope with Tanner that he does not get played off the floor because of his size, which he shouldn't because he is a strong defender. For the Boston Celtics, I'm going to go Luigi Swigo here out of a KK Mega Basket in Serbia. I think he is a player that can give Nemish Keita a bit of a competition. I thought Keita was very good in the regular season, but then in the playoffs, Joel Embiid got the better of him in the, I want to say, 4 games that it was Joel Embiid played in. And beyond that, the depth was just bad. In that game 7 in particular, the guys got into foul trouble and the rotations got ugly. The front court rotations got ugly very quickly for Boston. I think Swigo is a great shot blocker. He is a good floor spacer. And in Boston, he will be able to do those things at a high level. And the Celtics have drafted very well in the past. They've developed very well in the past. And I think that they are in a position to, if they draft a player like Swigo, they find a way to heighten what he does well and hide what he doesn't do as well. Similar to how they've managed to get good minutes out of Luka Garza, which was a very shocking development. On to the 28th pick. I will go Ibuka Okori for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I don't like the Anthony Edwards point guard experiment. I think that it is ugly offense oftentimes. And getting a, if nothing else, a developmental second unit point guard that can get downhill well and create well for himself gives them more stability just because he's more of a natural point guard. Anthony Edwards right now is doing something that he's not really comfortable doing as their point guard, and that's not to say it isn't working. Obviously, Anthony Edwards hasn't been amazing, and the Minnesota Timberwolves are in the midst of another strong year with Edwards as the main point guard. But with Mike Conley leading that second unit at times, starting into his older age, you think about what the next option is. I like Okori, strong downhill slasher, been on the smaller side, but he gets down the floor very well, lightning quick, and finishes plays well. Will help whatever players he's running with get looks for themselves because he is a strong playmaker. And yeah, I think that is the right pick for the Minnesota Timberwolves to experiment on a point guard after Rob Dillingham unfortunately didn't work out for them. 29th pick, I am going to go Amari Allen. This would be Juke Harris had he decided to stay in the draft, but it looks like he will be headed to Tennessee. With Allen, he gives you good floor spacing. He's a bit of a tweener at I think he measured 6'5.5" barefoot, but strong defender, moves around pretty well. Will he be guarding bigs in the NBA like it was in college? Likely not, because he's just not a very big player, but he's still a strong physical defender and he'll run in transition. I've mentioned that a lot with a lot of different players. It's one of the things that matters a lot to me. If you can get out and run in transition, that is one of the most valuable things that a player can do. On to the final pick of this draft. I will go the final pick of this first round. I will go Chris Sinak, who out of Memphis, out of Houston, forgive me, who was at times shaky for Houston, wasn't very efficient. You can see over here 54% true shooting as a big, less than 1 assist per game. But he's a strong rebounder. He's got pretty good defensive potential, and he'll be able to catch lobs because he's a great athletic player. We drafted Phylon earlier for Dallas. They'll still have Kyrie Irving in the fold. I think that it doesn't make much sense to draft another guard here. And they can take the upside swing. And if you see the player that people thought they were getting out of high school that ended up being ranked in the top 10 within his class, you've got another running mate alongside Cooper Flag with high end potential. Well, that is the end of this first round. If you want to see the entire draft, here it is. And I thank you all for tuning into this video if you're still here with me at the end. And I will see you guys next time.